Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our wind down for the end of the year. We are, I think, like 9 days until Christmas. We're close to 2023. 23? Yeah. So, with that, I've got some end of year treats. We have got you the Lorna Shore Pain Remains EP, and after this, you will have two end of year best of album and EP videos, where I will give you my 5 favourite albums of the year and 5 honourable mentions that were close but just missed out. And the same for EPs, where you'll have 5 of my favourite EPs and 5 that just missed out on being in the list. So, without further ado, let's hop into the review, shall we? Because it's a long one. So, Lorna Shore, Pain Remains. As 2022 winds down and many discuss best of albums, I bring a divisive album to our table. Many love it, but with love also comes hate. And as Lorna Shore has a skyrocket in popularity because of this album, it's also turned a lot of people against them for that same reason. But who is Lorna Shore? Well, Lorna Shore is a deathcore band that originates from New Jersey, and they were formed around 2009 from my research. Currently, the members are Adam D'Amico on lead guitars, Austin Archie on drums, Andrew Connor on rhythm guitars, Michael Yeager on bass, and of course Will Ramos on vocals. Now, previous vocalists being Tom Barber, who is currently of Chelsea Grin and Darko, originated in the band who in 2009 and dropped out back in 2018 when there was that massive vocalist switch up between him, CJ McCreary, and the dude that took over Signs of the Swarm. I don't remember his name though. Yeah. And like, as aforementioned, CJ McCreary from 2018 to 2019, but the less said about that, the better, I think. Discography-wise, the first EP dropped back in 2010, entitled Triumph, which had almost a metalcore-esque style from my research. Then, back in 2012, Bone Kingdom EP dropped, with a progressive deathcore sound, and in 2013, the third EP, Malficium? I'm not sure how to say that word, but that dropped. And finally, on June 9th, 2015, the debut album, Palms, was given to the world. Little factoid for people that like weird little bits of knowledge. It was produced by Fit for an Autopsy's guitarist Will Putney. So, on February the 17th, 2017, the band released album number 2 entitled Flesh Coffin, which was my introduction to the group through that album. In 2018, Tom Barber departed to take Alex Kohler's spot in Chelsea Grin, and CJ of Signs of the Swarm took over, and in 2020 they dropped Immortal, which many heralded as their best material to date, and some people still do, despite CJ and the issues that arose surrounding him somewhat overshadowing the album, and for many that wish to not separate artists from art and stuff like this, it created issues on enjoyment of the album. Now, again, I'm not going to go into CJ's stuff a lot. What I will say is the Immortal album is good, but I haven't been a big fan of CJ McCreary's later vocal delivery. I liked him back in Signs of the Swarm before everything all kicked off. I think that was peak CJ, personally. Um, Especially stuff like Cesspool of Ignorance, things like that. Like, he was on top form. But as the years went on, he kind of just turned into just slurry, sludgy, blah, 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 sort of shit. Like, you couldn't understand anything. But yeah. And despite all of the band, this issues surrounding, their previous vocalists dropping out and stuff, the band found will to tour and support the Immortal album release. Will previously, for those that don't know, was in bands such as In Monument of a Memory and Awake in Providence, which, if you haven't heard Awake in Providence, definitely check them out. They have some fucking bangers. But yeah, so Will filled in as like a stand-in vocalist for the Immortal album tour, but this was obviously cut short back in like the 2020 due to COVID-19 hitting and the pandemic arising around March the 5th, 2021. I think it was, they were on tour, which obviously caused issues since it was like right at the peak. With this, they also released an instrumental-only version of Immortal. And I do believe on their Patreon, I think it might have been, or some site, they did do an Immortal 22, which was the album, but with Will Ramos's vocals over it. I did find a few songs on YouTube, and from what I heard, it sounds good, so it wouldn't hurt if they put it out as a full friggin' thing, but On June 11th, 2021, the band headed... Wait, what? Sorry, I can't read my own writing. The band handed us to the Hellfire and announced Mr. Will Ramos as the new vocalist full-time. And the EP, And I Return to Nothingness, came on August the 13th of 2021. Giving us this very symphonic, blackened deathcore tone that we now know the band to be going with. Then, in October the 14th, 2022, we got Pain Remains. So now you have all of that information. Let us dive into this, shall we? Oh, did I mention this album runs for a mammoth 61 minutes and 6 seconds. I'll tell you what, writing this album review last night at fucking 2 o'clock in the morning, not a smart idea, but I had to get it done. So, without further ado, I bring to you track number 1. Welcome back, O Sleeping Dreamer. 7 minutes and 21 seconds. Yes, so the opening track is a doozy. Like I say, it's 7 minutes 21, and it starts with an atmospheric orchestral open with a choir that sounds almost boss battle-esque, which you'll probably hear me say in other album tracks as well. And this is all before Will comes in with the rest of the band in tow, and the drums start hammering away, the guitars tear through everything, and they all just have such a fast-paced, balls to the wall, no holding back delivery. Will, obviously, if you know the band, you know what Will's vocals style is like. It's beautifully brutal, which runs throughout, like his range of lows, highs to falsetto style fries. There's a solo in here, I believe from Adam D'Amico, which is masterfully done. And we end with the choir again. I also have an excerpt from the song, which I believe to be the chorus, which was, You fell far from grace, take hold of the dreamscape, misplaced within the emotion, a parallel shift. A world in slow motion, full now in place. This world will never be. Face to face, death and life, relative to the eye. This is the world inside your mind. And yes, it is a really good chorus, and the delivery is really well paced, thought out, and all the elements of the group make it really well delivered. Track 2, Into the Earth, 5 minutes 12 seconds. I believe this was one of the singles as well off of the album, but this one picks up almost immediately, and it's amped up to 10 and stays that way throughout, guided by enchanting angelic choirs over the devilish chaos between the vocals, pounding drums, fierce guitars, and impeccable solo once again. The soft orchestrals fade in only to be fucked off again into brutality, and the chorus is short and sweet, being "My heart, my soul, my body has grown so cold. Converge, I crash into the earth, into the earth." And it ends with a gnarly breakdown as well. So what's not to love? Moving on, we have track numero 3, Sun Eater, 6 minutes and 11 seconds. Again, I think this one might have been a single. But we follow suit with the choir opening for the band and them going full throttle with the fast, deep, sludgy vocals with crisp highs mixed in, and the stellar musicianship on show once again. And as per tracks 1 and 2, we do get a solo from the guitarists here as well. And there is 2 breakdowns, I believe, in this song, one at the midpoint and one at the end point. And there's just a simple, catchy chorus of "Omnipotent, I am the one, Icarus, I'll touch the sun. Omnipotent, I am the one, Icarus, I'll touch the sun." So, yeah. Like I said, very short, very sweet, just repeated. And we are moving on to track number 4 already, which is Cursed to Die, 4 minutes and 40 seconds. This is actually the shortest song on the entire album. Just let that sink in. And it starts with a guitar riff fading into full view. The guitar work really stands out throughout this track, and this song is honestly just a great track overall. Like, the entire way it's crafted was just so well thought out. The pre-chorus, the breakdown chorus structure later is a good way to wrap things up and a good choice. And then they round that off with solo number 4, which then leads into Will's outro. So you've literally got pre-chorus, breakdown, chorus, solo, outro. And it's just not holding back on their like end part. And I do think if you're going to check out a song and you're like, well, I don't want to listen to one of the long ones because I don't know if it's my cup of tea, Cursed to Die is a good pickup point. I've got a fucking hair in my eye. There you go. So moving on to the halfway point now, we are at track number 5, Soulless Existence. And this runs for 17... No, it does not run for 17 minutes, you dick. It runs for 7 minutes and 13 seconds. Jesus Christ. Right, halfway point here, even though we still have a lot more of the runtime to get through. This track has a slower pacing to the others, which is hardly noticeable to some people, honestly, but it does feel more methodically paced and thought out. Also, if you listen to the lyrics during listening to this song or even reading along, there's a lot of mentions of being lost between the black and white. And again, we do have solo number 5. honestly, not a lot to say about that one. It is a good song, but it's not as good as, for example, Curse to Die. Moving on to track number 6, we have Apotheosis. Apotheosis? I'm not sure how you say it. I'll go with Apotheosis. And this is 4 minutes and 55 seconds. The choir here is insanely movie soundtrack-esque or boss fight style. But the drums are full speed here, and there is a small amount of highs used more throughout the time and the lines. Like, the lines, like, bury the hatchet, another nail in the casket, my blood turns to ice beneath these barren skies, was paired with a choir of, a glimpse of light shimmers this time you guide the way through oblivion. This trail of thorns leads on. Get me out of this maze, this labyrinthian hell below. I was struggling to read my writing there. I got hand cramp writing that chorus. It's really solid, like the most solid parts of this lyrically. Like the chorus is really good. And again, it is a very solid track. Like each track overall has like a very solid chorus, great lyrics, and it's just so, these guys have really found their mark, if that makes sense. Like with Tom Barber, Flesh Coffin, for example, had a really cool theme, and Tom Barber, it was peak Tom Barber for me. I'm not 100% keen on his new stuff with Darko and Chelsea Grin. It's not bad, but Chelsea Grin now feels like Lorna Shore light. But we'll get into that maybe another day. You know, and like, it felt like Immortal was a step in the right direction, but I don't think if time went on, CJ would have been the right vocalist for the band. I think there would have been solid material coming out if things didn't happen, but I think Will might be the final piece to the puzzle that makes Lorna for the rest of the time, if that makes sense. So, take a sip of your drink, because we are on track number 7, Wrath. This one is about 4 minutes 58, just shy of 5 minutes. So, Will's vocals seem cleaner in the mix on this song. And that's juxtaposed very nicely by the choir that chants and adds another layer to the background of it all. And the chorus is one of my favourites throughout the album. I've fallen, the cursed angel, beginnings ignite the sky. Fall now like ash before me, devoured by the sea, fill the hole in my chest I have manifested, behold the new king. This album's got solid choruses throughout, but that one really did stand out to me. And Wrath as a whole single has some really good lyrics if you look through them. A lot of talks of like fallen angels being burned at the pyre, stuff like this, is thematically in tune with the rest of the album of like, you know, life and death, falling angels, devils grabbing at you sort of shit. But I'm sure this is what you're all here for, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? As we now round the corner onto the home stretch, we are at the last 3 tracks. And if you know this album and you know this band, you know what these last 3 motherfucking tracks are. So how about we sit down, we have a cup of tea, and we talk about Pain Remains parts 1, 2, 3. So, Pain Remains Part 1, Dancing Like Flames, runs for 5 minutes and 53 seconds. Now, whew, the slow build, the guitar, the drums fading in, joined by Will's vocals, the lyrics of loss, pain, all crafting a beautifully dark and sad portrait of images in your mind. The chorus, amazing as always. We're dancing like flames flickering in the night. We sway in time with the wind before melting away. You're far from my reach, but not far out of sight. You know the way to my heart, but you just play the strings again. It's pure artistry. And I do believe, as I was researching this and writing this up, I read somewhere online that the guitarist Adam D'Amico wrote the songs. I don't know how true that is, but I don't think that's something someone would lie about. But it was in the thing that I was reading, it said, you know, these were written from a place of pain, loss, and just a bunch of other emotions that kind of go hand in hand with all of that. And I think if you listen to it, you can pick up on that. That you can sense that these were written at a very tumultuous time in someone's life. And this was only part one of a 3-part song. And I remember when this came out, a lot of people were throwing around one particular word. And that particular word was masterpiece. But at that point, we hadn't heard parts 2 and 3 yet. We had only just had part 1 bestowed upon us. So, before we dub it a masterpiece, I reckon we should look and move on to track number 2. Or track number 9, part 2, sorry. After all I've done, I'll disappear. 5 minutes and 37 seconds. So part 2 carries on in the similar vein of dark, sad, masterfully, beautifully crafted carefully into phenomenal tracks, and the superb choruses continue with, and after all that I've done, after all of my pain, after all I've become, will I disappear like a ghost in the breeze, like fading memories, like the world you left was only just a dream, so I'll disappear. It really feels like you're walking through the stages of loss, grief. Ooh, I dropped my mic, apologies. Loss, grief, and at times acceptance with the writer. And as somebody themselves that kind of writes stuff through just how they're feeling a lot of the time, you can really pick up on the emotions that they were trying to convey. And I think, you know, you can really tell that if somebody is going through a dark time in their life, where they've just lost a loved one, where something bad has happened to them, these sorts of songs are going to be a good, you know, thing for them to go and turn back to and be like, yeah, you know, I'm not the only one that feels this way out there, sort of thing. It's going to be something people can just kind of sit there, embrace their emotions, and kind of vibe with. But with that being said, we still have one part left to look at, which is track number 10, part 3, In a Sea of Fire. 9 minutes and 13 seconds. Yes, you heard me correct, ladies and gents. 9 minutes 13. Jesus Christ. The third and final part of this 20+ minute trilogy has about a 1 minute 30 orchestral build from 2 into 3, and it's just mouth-watering. And the choir adds another tantalising layer before the band comes in, and I personally feel like part 3 is the strongest part of them all. The chorus of "I'll salt the earth in a crimson blaze, the world will burn in my fall from grace, witness the death of God, hear the devil's choir as I leave the stage in a sea of fire," which is highlighted with breakdowns of "fuck this existence, bring me back to where it all began in the fall, wake me up before I lose it all." The shortest piano and violin break, which just allows everything to kind of sink in for a second before coming straight back to Will with this high pitch, like, insane scream, was so well chosen. The final minute of choirs, twinkling pianos, crackling fires, after all of the chaos that surrounded us in this 3-part song, really just lets everything sink in, lets everyone take a breath and go, geez, that was a ride, that was a roller coaster. But before I move on to my final thoughts, I just want to give you guys the outro, because I do think this is quite a good part of the song as well. This is my epilogue, my soliloquy. Take this broken melody straight to the grave, dancing like flames after all that I've done, I'll salt the earth and disappear into a sea of fire. They use all 3 parts to make up the outro. Now, let's move on to my final thoughts and my top 4. So, at first listen, this album can be daunting for some people, especially if you're new to the blackened deathcore or blackened symphonic deathcore genres. Some may find it boring. It isn't for everyone, but it is worth trying at least once, I think. Even if you do just check out the Pain Remains trilogy or one specific song from it, you can find something in there that you will like. But with this album, opinions are everywhere, just like assholes, and it seems to be weirdly a Marmite album. You either love it or you hate it. Personally, I love it. Yes, there are some weaker tracks, but they don't deter you from the album. They are juxtaposed and highlighted by stronger tracks, which take your mind off of the weaker ones. And the weaknesses aren't through any fault of the band. They are kind of just like weird little things, like, something that could be cleaned up in the mix that would have made it a little bit better, or something like that. There's, the artistry behind the album is there. The lyrics, the vocals, the guitar work, the drum work, the rhythm guitar work, the bass work, everything is done superbly. And I do think every single member of the band needs to take a second, give themselves a pat on the back and go, we fucking made one hell of an album. Because for most people, this was album of the year. Don't get me wrong, it's a fucking phenomenal album, but it's not my album of the year. I will give you that little glimpse into our next video. It isn't my top album. But shout out to Will, shout out to Adam and the rest of the guys. You did a phenomenal job. I can't wait to see what the fuck you bring to the table next. And for me, this is a 9.5 out of 10. Like I said, my only issue is the mixing on some of the songs could have been a little bit clearer to allow Will's vocals through just a little bit more, instead of having like it lost in the shuffle of the drums and the guitars and stuff like that. But like I said, that's no fault through the band's own or nothing like that, so it's not marked them down too heavily. Moving on, we have my top 4 tracks, which are number 1, Part 3, Sea of Fire. Number 2, Welcome Back, O Sleeping Dreamer. Number 3, Part 2, After All I've Done, I'll Disappear. Part 4, Track 4, Part 1, Dancing Like Flames. So, with that is our final album review of the year done, ladies and gentlemen. I will be dropping the best of album and EP reviews for you soon. I don't know what we're going to come back with in the new year. If you have any albums you want me to review, slap them in the comments, let me know, and I will get to them. Don't forget, anyone that does recommend an album to be reviewed, if it gets picked, you will get a mention in the video. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to love you and leave you, and I will just say this: if I don't see you soon, if you don't check out the best of end of year lists, have a good Christmas, have a safe new year, don't get too drunk, and I will see you in 2023. But for those of you that will be sticking around and checking out the end of year lists, see you soon. Stay safe out there.